Hey everyone, and welcome to Mind Muscle HQ, episode 11. Today, we've got a special guest, Sarah Parker Hatchard, joining us. And Sarah's going to be talking about the life of a physique competitor, bodybuilder, bikini. And we're going to be talking about manifesting your dreams and managing your expectations. So before we introduce Sarah, I've got the guys, the usual guys, the team, the crew with us. So do you want to say hello, guys?
Hey, guys.
Hey,
Okay, so Tyler, let's start off with you. We normally do an introduction on what we've done this week. So what have you been up to?
That's a very good question, Matt. I've just been trying to think what I've been up to because it's pretty much the same every week. I'm like a creature of habit. But nearly forgot about my little adventure time at the weekend. So I took part in Gelt Gladiator, which is pretty much like one of them tough mudders, like a mud run, which was a 10K. Me and quite a few of my clients that I've been coaching took part in that. And it was a really good get together and a bit of a challenge. So that was on Saturday, and it was a 10K run with 69 obstacles. And I have to say, like, I was feeling that, like, it was insane. I wasn't prepared for it at all. I was up to my head in mud anyway. So was everyone else. I was pulling everyone up the big banks of mud. We were in water submersion. We were in electric fences. We were going through water tunnels. So all kinds of fun.
Did you say electric fences?
Electric fences. Yeah, I heard that right.
Shit.
Like, shit, how do we deal with that? So just run.
You didn't lick them as you were going under.
No, I don't think that would have been a good idea.
No, it wouldn't have been, but something I probably would have tried myself, I reckon.
So that was on Saturday, and I had my two little boys with me who was watching. And turns out there was another run the next day, which was a 3K kids run. And they signed up for that. I was like, right, sweet. So I'll take you there on the Sunday. Little did I know, my 5-year-old needed an adult companion, which meant I had to do it again. Right around the course again. And to be fair, I was so proud of my boys because they actually took on like the adult obstacle course. And they got round the full thing, the water submersion, the electric fences, the whole lot. So I was really, really proud of them, to say the least. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to.
So how did you feel then on Monday after that, you know, obviously additional load to your working week? Like yeah. physically?
I definitely felt it, Matt. I felt pretty shit, to be honest. My legs were sore and energy was lower than usual. Luckily, it was a rest day and I definitely needed that. So I took some time to rest up, done a little bit of active cardio. I always get my steps in. But actually my mood was lower than usual. I always find when I really exert myself, I can feel a slight mood drop, like my body's a bit more depleted than usual. And I think it's important to really recognise things like that and not let it get you down, because your body does need that time to heal and recover. But right back to it on the Tuesday, and had some good training sessions since. So, yeah. Okay,
cool. Well, that's some weekend. Yeah, I can't believe you didn't even remember what you'd done. So I'd still be, I'd still have aches and pains now. I wouldn't have forgotten what I'd done. Okay, thanks, Tyler. Jamie, what have you been up to?
Well, I really wish I went first, because I was about to bitch and moan about sitting at a laptop for 12 hours every day, but I didn't get hit by an electric fence or dunked in a cold tank or whatever, so I haven't really got anything to moan about. No, me just literally, I've just launched that Gelt tour that I mentioned last week, and so that's actually going live on the 4th of October. So I've done like an early bird for that, which is a brand new coaching package, and literally I would say around 8 to 12 hours a day of rebuilding. I basically broke down all my process as a coach and rebuilding it from the ground up. All the tasks that I've had on a to-do list for over 9 months are all getting done in the space of 3 weeks, which is fun. And yeah, pretty much just upgrading that and working through that. And yeah, you know, we spoke about my HRV being like 40 last week. It's finally back up into the 90s, even though I'm ill, if anyone can hear my voice. I have hit puberty. This is a blocked nose. And yeah, I would say, 1 or 2 training sessions back, just getting a bit of movement back in and not like pushing it too much. And my HRV comes straight back. So it shows how much sitting at your desk all day is incredibly bad for you if you don't actually look after yourself. So that's pretty much me to a T, just launching a new package. I'll be going more depth on it next week on the podcast. Because it'll be episode 2 for the gut side of things, and I'll cover it more in there. But that's pretty much me to a T. I didn't get electrocuted or get dunked or anything like that. I really feel lazy now. Thanks, Tyler. And it's me.
That's you know, typing away at a computer isn't that interesting to the listeners, but what it means is that you're spending time in a week or two. There's going to be a lot of stuff out there for them to actually see and grab a hold of and be more visual and physical. So it's hard work. You know, it's nothing compared to what Tyler was doing physically, but it's still a drain. It's still you know, it's a chore almost. It's got to be done. But I'm excited to see that as well, Jamie. I'm excited for you as well as a friend and team member.
One of it is a 40-minute. So I do everything on PowerPoint when I do my presentations. One of them is a 40-minute free webinar. So I go through gut health, food intolerances, lifestyle factors that can seriously amplify results, and they're so simple, and also the benefits of blood work. So in 40 minutes, I cover that. That will be completely complimentary. So the idea is to explain to the person before you even think about your calorie intake, start looking at your health, your day-to-day lifestyle, all these things that you're ignoring just because you want to be in a deficit, but you still want a Yorkie bar, stuff like that. So that's going to be a part of it. And then that will be followed up with an email set up, which can be 8 emails that continue educating everyone that watches it. So the idea of it is to then do that too. And then I've also built a whole new section of my client portal. And that's only 2 things that come to my head. So yeah, it's draining, but once it's done kind of mindset. So it's going to be a great tool to and a service for clients moving forward. So exactly. So well on that. Thank you, man.
So I guess me really.
What have you been up to?
Well, it's funny because you know, backstage we always have the conversation. Well, I admittedly said that I didn't remember what I'd done either, but it's just because it's not that those things are uneventful. It's like you just get into a grind of consistently doing things every day. So I had to think about it, but really since the last podcast, it's literally getting the clients ready for show and peak week and prep. And last weekend, I was prepping peaking 2 clients for 2 shows. We got fairly good results again. 1 client in a natural federation came 3rd in a really big and strong lineup. Looked the best he'd ever looked. And it was actually very, very close between 1st and 3rd. There wouldn't have been a lot in it. And on a different day, it probably could have gone the opposite way around. So it was that close. It's given him a lot of confidence. And he got an invite to the British finals. So that's in 3 weeks' time.
What federation was that, Matt? Was that BMBF?
No, well, he's got a British invite for BMBF, but it was UKDBFA. I think that one at the weekend was the UKDBFA. So, and like I said, there was 10 in his class, and the quality for it was 10 really good physique. So, and then I didn't actually get to that show because it clashed with me looking after my son. But on the Sunday, I made a trip down to Dartford with another client, and we'd done really well there at the FitX Southeast. And he won his class going into the British FitX finals this weekend. So my week is just consumed with getting these guys ready for the shows and then subsequent shows. So it doesn't stop. It's kind of as soon as he finished that show on the Sunday night, we were already talking about what was he doing that night to be able to get ready for the following weekend. So yeah, and I've got other clients going into this weekend as well. So it's non-stop because when you get into that window just before stage, it's not like you can send a plan and get them to follow it. There's lots of ad hoc, there's lots of questions coming in constantly. Things are variable, so it depends on how they look, how they're feeling. You've got to be able to be fluid in what you're doing. You can't just say there's your plan for the week. It's on a day-by-day basis. Sometimes on a couple hour basis, you look at them and say, okay, send me pics again or video in 2 hours. Let's hook up again in 2 hours. Let's have another look. So it's quite demanding in that week or two prior to the show. So yeah, that's me really just been busy, consumed with that. And because I was so consumed with it, I'd forgotten what I was doing. So before we introduce Sarah, I just want to give someone a shout out. I've heard a couple of people have mentioned to me that they are listening to the show, and it's nice to hear from people that are actually listening to it and enjoying it. So this shout goes out to Big Joe. You guys have met him. He is the guy that helped us on the FitX Expo, trying to find the table and chairs.
Yeah,
the guy I was pestering for like 45 minutes.
Yes.
Sorry, but thank you.
Joe's a really helpful guy. He'll be doing cardio whilst listening to this. He's been on a great journey himself. I think he's lost in this last journey 200 or more pounds.
Wow.
So I'm just glad that as a podcast, as a service, that we can help him get through this journey himself. And whilst you're doing this cardio now, Joe, I want you to be smashing it and listening to Sarah talk all about mindset, which is a good thing for you to listen to. Okay, so over to a good friend of mine, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for inviting me on, because it's just such a great opportunity to speak with like-minded people, but also reach out to people that maybe I haven't come across, and hopefully, like yourselves, can help anyone. Even if it's one person, it's enough,
Exactly. So just touching on that there, I think all four of us here on this podcast, we do what we do because we want to help people. And your first opening line where it was sincere around helping people. It wasn't about getting a message out about you. It was literally the opening line was about helping people. And that was nice for you to say that. And that wasn't planned at all. That was completely natural. So
yeah, and I think that's why we get on so well, because there's no agenda to what we do. It organically happens. And like we were saying, it's so much easier if you can just be honest, transparent, and if you've got that in you to help people, it comes across. You don't even have to sell yourself. It's not about that. And I'd rather have a smaller community around me of people that you can share those experiences and learn from one another, rather than live on my ego and try and sell things on myself. So yeah, it's a good vibe when you meet people that are of the same ilk.
Yeah, well, there's definitely no egos here. And one of the things that we try to do on this podcast is be open, honest, truthful, and just be ourselves. We've got nothing else to prove. And literally, by you coming on now and saying what you said, it's just literally kind of compounds, for want of a better word, the kind of message that we're trying to get out as a team. So thank you. Okay, so let's just, on that note then, let's just tell the listeners a little bit about you, so they get a little bit of background. What is your background then, Sarah?
So this is quite, I guess, a big part of my journey as well. A lot of people can resonate with at school and as a youth, as it were. I wasn't into sport or activity really at all. I was one of those that would be like, I'm on my period, so I don't have to take part in PE. And I had no interest at all. And in my early adulthood, I'd be going out drinking and all the stuff you do. And then I went and did a personal training course at college. And like at that point, I didn't even know about nutrition. I didn't really drink any water, that sort of stuff. And I started doing triathlon, and I got up to half Ironman distance, and that was good. And it taught me, a level of resilience and structure and, training in itself. And then I've got a sort of long-term niggle in my back, and the running just did not serve it well, the impact of that. So I can still run and everything else, and I can do most things, but doing half Ironman, it is a lot. So I decided I wanted to sort of switch things up and maybe look at something different. And I went and watched the bodybuilding show. And I was literally like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like all of these people with the fake tan muscles. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And a friend of mine said to me, you could do that. And I was literally like, no chance. Like these people are insane. And I'm looking at the stage and it's like so cool. And then the next day I went to the gym and I was doing some like bit of weight training, nothing too strenuous. And I thought, maybe I could do this. And then started looking for a coach, found my coach that I've been with for like the whole journey. So like 7 years now. And started looking at potentially going into a competition. So the first one was 6 or 7 years ago. So I started in the amateur division. I did several shows and didn't place. It was when there was, you know, maybe 4 or 5 federations that you knew about. So there's like UK BFF and some of the original ones, NABA, stuff like that. So there wasn't as many options as there is now, of course. There's lots of federations, lots of locations. So I did my first show, didn't place, did another couple of shows, had off seasons and stuff in between, didn't place as well. And then when bodybuilding started to open up a bit more and there was some new federations coming out, etc., also I'd gained some muscle mass. I was able to start becoming successful in the sport. So mindset wise, from the moment I first won a show, my whole journey completely changed because it gave me the realization that I was, I guess, good enough to compete, and also even call myself a bodybuilder, because until that point I would shy away from, you know, people would say, well, you compete, and I'd be like, yeah, and I wouldn't want to go into it because I didn't feel like I could say I'm a bodybuilder because I'd never placed, you know, didn't really have much muscle mass and stuff like that. So then I was successful as an amateur. I won the British finals with UK UP in 2019 for my category. And then I did another standalone show called Rhinos, which qualified me for Wabba International. So I went over to Portugal and I won Miss Universe, which also qualified me for the Pro League in Wabba. And then last year, during the lockdown and stuff, I went over to Portugal and did Universe again. And then this year, I've just competed a couple of weeks ago. I went to a UK BFF show. So I've done lots of different federations as well. And also now I'm doing a bit of judging, a bit more mentoring, a bit more coaching. So it's been a very long journey. And I'm sure we'll delve into some of the dark periods that I've faced as well, especially post-show. As we've spoken about, Matt, it's quite a scary time. So yeah, in summary, that's where I'm at.
A point there, Sarah, that's really good and quite eye-opening for a lot of listeners is actually the journey from beginning your bodybuilding to, you know, making it to the top placings and making it to the universe. It doesn't happen overnight. You've been consistent within training, nutrition, mindset, everything for how long was that? 7 years?
Yeah.
7 years, yeah. And that's consistently daily, every single day, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is, I'm sure you can resonate, Tyler, with, you know, even when I'm in an off season and I go on holiday or different things, I'm always thinking, have I had enough protein? Have I had enough hydration? Have I got my steps in? All of those things. Yeah, and it's actually now I'm having, so I've just competed, I'm in like a recovery phase and I'm enjoying actually taking my foot off the gas more than I have previously. I think because of having the achievements I have, I can realize that, you know, it's okay to still have these periods where you're able to go for some meals and different things without having that like worry that, is it macro friendly? Is it this? Is it that? Because it's very consuming, this sport, very consuming.
Mm-hmm.
So Sarah, how do you want to tackle this from a kind of steps? So obviously you started, as most people would imagine, and you know, from that point where someone says, why don't you give it a go? And you're like a little bit, oh, should I? And then you know, you've dipped your toes in the water, and yeah, like any amateur, you know, you've started the process. So do you want to talk about kind of mindset, maybe even prior to that? Where were you at prior to even stepping on stage? What, mind-wise, strength-wise, I don't know. Is that something that is a good beginning?
Yeah, I definitely say so, because when I first went into the sport, I was very naive to think that it was just training and nutrition. I legitimately thought, well, if I can eat in a particular way and train in a particular way, I can get on stage. And I'm sure you can appreciate there's a lot more to it. Even stuff like the posing protocol that you need to do to be able to exhibit your physique, you wouldn't know, but even the experiences with posing camps, posing instructors, etc., like, it's not an easy thing to do. And I'm not from a background of anything like dance, anything that involves being able to exhibit yourself and perform. And I was, I've never been big, as it were, but I've never had a physique like I have now. So I've, those realms are really difficult to try and combat, and be able to step on stage and go, here I am, I want a podium finish. The first couple of seasons was almost like practicing and mastering the craft of that. Mm-hmm. So when I first started competing, it was literally, learning what it took to be a competitor.
So Sarah, just come back a step. You just mentioned, you described your body almost there, but what was your what were your feelings about your body, in the sense of, because this is something that we've talked about, is body conscious. A lot of people do this because they're either overweight or they're underweight, or they want to physically change and they don't like how they look. But that's the nuts and bolts of it, mainly, when it gives most people the kind of energy to get into it. Where were you? Were you confident in the way that you looked? Were you not confident? I don't know. I'm just trying to get a feeling for it.
Yeah, I mean, when I look back now, I think I was, as that sort of 21-year-old, before competing, I would hide behind, you go out and you'd wear like certain clothes as a younger woman, and you'd have a drink and you'd mask maybe how you potentially feel about yourself by getting drunk and various other things. And then it's not till you look back and you go, I don't think I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't like, I've got a really good body. I was like an average, size 8 to 10, normal person, as it were. Not overweight, not underweight. When I started bodybuilding, my first ever goal was to see if I could get a six-pack. I was inspired to sort of see if I was able to even do that, because I didn't know if that would be even possible. Because, as you know, Matt, until you do a prep or a diet, you don't actually know what you're going to look like at that tail end. So whether I have any muscle and what have you. And actually, what I try and say to first timers and people competing is, when you diet, if you haven't done much weight training, I always say bag of shit, but that's when I'm referencing myself. But I was like a skinny, I didn't look very healthy. And, I had the six-pack, but there was no muscle because I hadn't done the weight training. And that was hard to accept in itself, because you're like, but, surely I'd look all right when I diet down. And it wasn't until I've done the years and years and years and years that I've gone, oh, okay, so you need the muscle. And a lot of people think you can just build muscle by eating a bit of protein and weight training. But actually, like we said, Tyler, it's the long haul for this sport, really.
So that's a good point. I want to talk about that a little bit more, about the evolution of a bodybuilder, bikini athlete, whatever you want to talk about. So, there is an evolution there from muscle mass. But before we do, obviously, I mentioned visual and were you happy with the way that you looked. But another driver for getting people on stage is mental, and depending on experiences in life, just the mental frame, of that person. sometimes there's a desire to do it because it's a challenge, because you want to become stronger. You know, I've known ladies, and this is a sad scenario, where they've been physically abused by males that want to then, you know, get stronger, be stronger, almost do it to be able to fend off male attack in the future. It's kind of driven by that. So was it rather than just wanting to get six pack, were there additional things on top of that as well?
Yeah, I guess for me, it did expose a need to want to control something. When I first went into bodybuilding, one of the first conversations I had with my coach, Stephen, and we always talk about it, and I can laugh about it now, but at the time it was deadly serious. One of the first things I said to him was, I haven't eaten chocolate for 6 weeks. I don't need to. I do not need these foods in my life. I'm committed. I can be a bodybuilder. And he was like, hold up. What do you mean you haven't eaten chocolate for 6 weeks? I was like, because I want to be a bodybuilder. And he was like, okay, so not eating chocolate for 6 weeks, that means that, you know, you can go into this then. And I'm like, yeah, because I felt like I needed to have this like regimented, strict, really harsh diet. And that was almost the start of me trying to, I think, control things, because as a child and through my early adulthood, things were quite out of control with drinking, with abusive partners, like you mentioned there, Matt, with people you know. My upbringing, my dad wasn't around from a young age, and there was various tangents there that meant I've never been in control. So suddenly being able to put myself on a food plan and a training plan was like turned into this sort of neurotic person to want to control things. And then that has also, you know, I've had a lot of evolution in that regard. So initially it was for the wrong reasons mentally. It was trying to control and, you know, be part of something, be something basically.
So I know.
Sorry, Matt, but I think that is the most beautiful way of putting it. Like, I really do. I've not heard that before. And actually, I think that's such a positive way and a positive way to kind of expose yourself into bodybuilding, and a motivation and a drive, because you're improving yourself and working on an old weakness that you've now, I would say you've got full control on that now.
Yeah. When I look back, it was scary, you know, the pressure I put on myself. Like, my coach has never told me, go and win this show, go and do this, go and do that. He's only ever guided me. But I was, you know, so neurotic about wanting to, like, I was striving for something. I was always looking on Instagram going, I want to look like that girl. I want to do, if I haven't placed, I'm not good enough. I'd be in the gym the next day, overtraining, killing myself. And now it's like, look how far you've come and what you've achieved for yourself. It's not about anyone else. Yeah. And, you know, the control I have, I can switch in and out of that now much easier and take it for what it is. But it's a really difficult time as a competitor when you first start out and you maybe don't get the placings and things that you feel that you have worked for. But I always say to people, you know, when you're being judged as a competitor, the judges are looking at the stage and they only see you there for that 10-20 minutes. They don't know that you've been abused, that you've hit your macros every single day for 2 years, that you're going through X, Y, and Z, because they're there to judge your physique, and it's not a personal thing. And that's, you know, it's quite a hard pill to swallow, but it's true, you know.
Yeah.
I know that Tyler can relate very well to this, because Tyler's got a similar story, a similar background, similar drivers, similar mindset to you, Sarah. But I know from experience, from meeting thousands of athletes, that it's often the mental side of it which actually draws people in, and then the physical side is what kind of maintains their desire to continue. But it's a weird, I always call it a journey. Some people's journey only lasts for one show, or don't even make one show. It might last a month or a couple of months. Some people's journey lasts for decades, or more, and never ends. Mine hasn't ended, mine's still going. So the journey is not just a transformation or change in physique. And I think that's the least important thing. And I don't think we should talk about the physical changes too much on this, because this is about mindset, about the ability to cope. And I think when a competitor, and not everybody is young or you know, in the teens. Some people are older. So I've seen people compete for the first time at 50 years old or more. So we're not pigeonholing people here as young as a first-time competitor. And that person going onto stage for the first time, that journey starts, you know, prior to that. And like, so the journey for me is always it's a self-repairing journey. I see it as often as a self-repairing journey. But then once you go through these phases, most people have got some kind of damage, or damage may be an excessive word, but they've got a weakness that they want to improve on. And you've, like Tyler said, you've really kind of talked about that well. You wanted to take control and fix some issues and just be in control of your life. But that control, taking control, is a natural step because of lots of issues. Trust, you know, you can't rely on other people, so you become this one person on this journey, trying to self-repair whatever weaknesses or damages you've got, pretty much on your own. You've got friends, family, you've got coaches and things which help, but particularly when you first start, your desire to do so well is so high that you're doing everything excessively. You know, if your coach says do 20 minutes cardio, you'll quite often do 40 minutes cardio because you think that's the best thing to do. If he says you're on 2,500 calories, well, you start taking away calories because you don't understand the process, because you want to make it harder. And even I've even come across people, and myself included to a certain degree, coming into bodybuilding at a point feeling wounded from life experiences, and that self-repair thing doesn't actually, sometimes it can actually make things worse as well. And what I felt it was a little bit like self-harm. When you cut yourself or do something that is not, well, it's to get attention. It's for all the reasons why people self-harm. I see bodybuilding sometimes as a self-harming exercise when you first get into the sport. And I think what I want you to take over, Sarah, from, and Tyler as well, feel free to chip in as well, Tyler, is when you've gone through that self-harming phase, and then you realize actually there's a lot more to gain from this sport, and you realize that, you know, the science is behind it, the benefits of doing it, the strength that you can get from it. I think that's what I'd like to talk about if possible. So either one of you pick it up. Sarah, you're our guest.
Yeah, I mean, definitely after my first show, there was that real dark period of post-show, which most competitors that have competed before would have felt. You know, even if you win a show, you wake up the next day and you look around and everything's the same. And yes, you've got some more Instagram followers and a trophy, but you're still in that mind, you know, you're still within yourself to want, so what's next? What can I get better at? And, you know, in particular, the first few seasons where I didn't even feel like the judges looked at me. You've battered yourself for 6 to 8 months. And then you're like, you know, you compete, you go for your post-show meal and you're thinking, well, I haven't placed, I haven't done very well, I've let everyone down, I've let myself down. The next day you wake up, you overtrain, you want to eat, but you don't want to eat, you don't really know what to do. Naturally, having a coach at this point is extremely beneficial, and on the lead up, and Stephen's been, I can't tell you, you know, I trust him with my life, and he's helped me through those periods. But even relationships that you have around you, you know, I remember like it was yesterday, my first show on our way home, because you often have to travel. we stopped at a petrol station and my family wanted to get a Subway. And I'm thinking, why are they eating a Subway in front of me? Why are they doing that? Why are they punishing me? Why? I could eat that because I'd done my show and I was going into off season and it was relaxing time. But I put all of this stress on myself to go, no, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing that. And it's not until you experience post-show and competing in itself that you build up that tolerance. And then the resilience and the tolerance and the depths that I've been to as a competitor, now, you know, I can't tell you how content I am inside with who I am and how I come across it. And like when we started the session today, what I want to achieve in life, you know, I don't need an ego. Yes, my ego will come in at times and what have you, but the resilience for me, I don't know about you, Tyler, is probably the biggest attribute I've gained from my bodybuilding and what I've done so far.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Something when I began my journey was seeing it like you as nutrition and training. But looking back over the last 5 years, it actually, the journey, exactly how you call it, Matt, it really is a journey. And I would call it a journey of self-improvement, not just on a physical aspect. I would say that's 10% of it. You know, the rest, 90%, is a whole mental journey, which I wasn't expecting when I began my bodybuilding journey. It gives you a really good insight into what you are, who you are, what you're actually capable of. And when you actually achieve little wins, and these wins are on a daily basis, whether that be training, nutrition, or personal goals where you're having a struggle day, but actually you just get shit done anyway because you know that's getting you one step closer to your goal. All of them add up, and it's almost like you grow into a stronger person without even realizing it. And it's not until you look back and think of that very first time on stage when you don't have enough muscle mass, and it was probably the hardest prep that you've ever done because your calories were low, you had no real muscle mass there, you know, you were quite really slim. I explain myself as actually an Ethiopian on my very first.
We say that, me and my best friend say that, we're Ethiopian twins. Yeah.
And it's going through all that whole journey to honestly, the understanding that I now have of myself from going through all of that is really motivating. It motivates me more, and I want to really share that with more people to get that understanding along the journey.
And also understanding your why. Like I always say to people, if you're going to go into competing, please, you know, take a moment to understand why are you doing it and what it is you want to achieve. Ideally, you don't want to just go into this for a piss around, because there's a lot of complexities to, first of all, getting stage lean, you know, what your body goes through and what that comes into, you know, what goes through your mind. Every single prep, I have an epiphany and something quite big changes. And, you know, I believe, because when I first got into competing, I don't know about you, but people would say to me, oh, you know, you shouldn't make too many decisions when you're in prep. Your brain's not functioning as it would, da, da, da. I actually find that I feel like my brain is hyper, you know. You know, everything seems clearer to me. And then I'm like, oh, well, you know, people say it won't be, don't get too invested in certain things. And I'm like, you know, I'm firing on all cylinders. I want to, you know, be living my life when I'm in prep. I'm literally loving it.
That's a comment I don't really like, when people say not to put 100% into something.
Yeah.
If you find that you really enjoy something and it makes you happy and it's making you better as a person, not just for your personal life, but actually professionally and home life, why would you not give 100% into something like that?
Mm-hmm. And it's 100% nutrition, 100% training. It's not 50-50. It's, you know, when people say, oh, you know, you've got this like pie chart and it's that much nutrition, that much training. It's like, no, it's 100% training, 100% nutrition, 100% posing protocol, 100% mentality, and you know, and it's aspiring to be the best you can be. And my coach has always said to me, you know, stop looking at other physiques and going, I want to look like that, I want delts like that. Everyone's genetics are different. You can only be yourself. And that's another thing, you know, people get so inundated with this pressure to look like a certain way, but it you know, it might be worlds apart from where you're at, and even your category, or, you know, what federation you're going to compete with.
Yeah, definitely. I've actually got a question here for you, Sarah. I always hear that bodybuilding's a lonely sport. That's something that gets thrown around quite a lot. What would be your opinion on that?
I would say that it's not lonely at all unless you make it. In those periods of time where I've felt lonely, it would be mainly the post-show period. But with experience, I've learned to actually open up more around that period. And I feel like it's lonely when you first start out, because you probably make it lonely. You feel like you should be punishing yourself maybe a lot of the time. Like we said, Matt, earlier, you know, you're often trying to fill a void, or you're trying to make something better, control something. When you realize that this can be a sport of learning both mentally and physically and improving yourself, it can be one of the most, you know, it's so far away from being lonely. Actually, it can be sometimes too interactive. So you've got to find what works for you. But I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, I always find it comes from, because you have to rely on yourself. It's a very individual sport. You don't have a team around you. And when you go into something like that, the impression can be, you know, it might be lonely, but it's all right. It's the opposite, isn't it?
I mean, I've got an opinion on that. And loneliness is an emotion. So Sarah kind of expressed it around when most people start. It's in that, they're in that almost damaged phase. So loneliness is one of the first reactions you're going to feel when you start to do things on your own. So that's natural for loneliness to kick in at that point. As you grow and get stronger, doing things on your own is empowering. You no longer feel lonely being on your own. So it certainly is a lonely sport in a sense that you have to do this on your own. You can't generally do it with other people, because what you train, what you eat, and what cardio you do, times you do it, all these kind of things is different to anybody else. Even if you live with that person, it's different. The competitions you prep for, etc., it's completely different. So you have to take that journey on your own. Now, that's where people get mistaken from a soul journey on your own, which is empowering and rewarding, is not lonely. But that's the evolution that you have to take and this is the kind of an emotional evolution I'm talking about, not the physical, the way you look. It's the emotional journey you have to take. And I remember feeling very lonely, but I almost exasperated that. I kind of wanted to feel lonely and wanted that was part of the punishment, or part of the challenge, or part of it was what drew me in deeper. But when you push yourself to the limits that aren't necessarily the best things for a physique, but when you're pushing yourself mentally to a limit, that's when you start to almost come out of your body and start to look at things, and it gives you that vision, like the view of, I can do this. It gives you that strength. You suddenly become kind of, you can clearly think, you can see, you know who you are. Tyler, is what you said, is you're finding who you are. And I think that's very, very important. And that's a difference between the terminology being lonely as a bodybuilder. I think that's important to get that across.
I agree with that. And I think mental resilience and becoming mentally stronger, remember where that comes from. It's individual. It is yourself that can only achieve that. There was a podcast that I listened to a long, long time ago that's always stuck with me. You guys will probably know of him, David Goggins. Very for the strongest man on earth, that's what he calls himself. But he always explains the time in your mind exploring the dungeon. That's all he talks about, and that's always stuck with me. And you do have to spend time in that dungeon during a prep for bodybuilding right throughout the journey, and that there helps you grow as a person.
Yeah, I'd also say as well, an extension from what we're saying there about how people see bodybuilding, a lot of people have got that connotation with it being a selfish sport, and I do agree with that. But if you can't have time and, you know, dedication to work on yourself for the right reasons, for me, bodybuilding is to explore what I can achieve in my physique and mentally, then, you know, why shouldn't you be able to do that? If your environment and your lifestyle setup is okay to be able to dedicate the time to your bodybuilding and people around you understand that, what's wrong with being selfish if it's to, you know, enlighten your own life?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I've written down selfish as a point to eating. That came about when you started talking about, the question came into my head when you started talking about eating out with your family members and things like that. But before I get on to that, again, selfishness is a behavior that when you're feeling down, when you're feeling vulnerable, when you're feeling damaged, or whatever terminology that we want to use it for that person entering the sport, selfishness in the negative sense can overtake because it's a new experience. Plus, a key factor in this is selfishness exposes the weaknesses around you, i.e. friends and family that are, what's the word? There's a word that I need to use, but they're not good for you, toxic. What it does is the selfishness nature of the sport reveals toxic relationships, and then that's when the person is caught in a struggle between emotional relationships and friends, and I'm putting, for those people that can't see me, speech marks, friends, even family members that beforehand you were going out partying with, drinking with, and now you've said, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Well, that's a relationship that you've broken, and that's a selfish relationship, but that creates negativity. So that again, there's an evolution here and I know so many people can relate to this, but there's a selfishness that is negative. So we can talk about internally as well. And I think, let's get to the point where what gave me the question was, you mentioned about when the example you gave was the day after the show and they wanted to eat pizza or whatever, and you said, oh no. But if you take that back prior to show, and you're going out socially with family or friends, and I know that people are like, they can get quite nasty about it, and they go, why are you eating this before me, or why in front of me, or why are you doing it? Well, that's a weakness. That is selfish and it's negative. You can't expect anybody else to go on this journey with you, and that's a strength factor. Whilst it's not comfortable sometimes when you're absolutely starving, and I'll give you an example. Yesterday, Anita bought some mince pies ready for Christmas and left them on the side, and I kept walking past and I was like licking my lips. But I'm strong enough to be able to deal with that, and I find it funny now.
Yeah.
That could have created an argument in a relationship. I could have been very selfish and go, what the F are you doing leaving mince pies on the side when you know I'm on a prep, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's so selfish and up your own arse that that's an immature thing to happen. And the evolution of that, the strengthening of your willpower, when you can look at them mince pies and just walk past them without any, you might go, oh, they'd be nice, but I can't eat them.
Yeah.
Or you open the fridge and there's lots of nice food in there and you can't eat it, but it's not torturing you because you've developed a level of strength over that. So I was just talking about you. she just walked in, but yeah. So there is definite negative, selfish things that we when we first start this journey, we need to get over and learn to deal with that shit. There is the negative things that other people try to put on top of you as well, and that's the toxic relationships, and I would imagine that's going to generate a little bit of discussion there.
I was just about to say, if I can jump in from a non-prep scenario, but this is something that I'm very hot on, is there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. There's a fine line between sorting your shit out and being labeled selfish. Like, there is a lot of labels that people put on us are normally their insecurities. Yeah. So obviously, as everyone knows, I'm not in this realm, I'm in the health realm. But when you look at things like elimination diets, or when you're trying to sort your own health out, like a very good example is someone that's incredibly overweight, 9 times out of 10 have a very unhealthy family. They have a very unhealthy circle. Their friends drink on the weekends. They want to stop doing this. Now, the first thing they get called is a health freak or a fitness freak. Yeah, if you turn around and said, well, you're a fat shit, you'd be labeled a prick for saying that to that person, where you can say it the other way around, which really gets up my skin. So, and it's something you remind yourself, and I'm sure we all do it to our own clients, is when they're labeled, like I've had someone go, my partner's just called me arrogant. And I was like, no, your partner's, and I said this quite openly, I'm not gonna lie, your partner's a lazy slob that doesn't want to do anything with their life. And they're now threatened that you are, and they're scared you're going to leave them. And they're trying to put that guilt on you. Or if someone calls you selfish because you're in a prep and you're trying to conquer your own demons to get at the end of that prep or photo shoot, whatever you're doing, that other person that's labeled you selfish either doesn't understand it and then that's ignorance, or they do understand it and they're scared of what you're doing because they can't do it, and then that's just being selfish in their end. So normally when someone insults you or labels you, unless you are being a complete prick like Matt just said, it's 9 times out of 10 more of a reflection on them. And this is something that's really hard, because when someone insults you, you take it personally, everyone does. You get called a freak and it's not nice to hear these things. However, when you almost have that mental willpower that prep can provide and all these things can provide, it ends up you have that confidence to go, that says more about you than it does to me. I'm not selfish, you're closed-minded. I'm just not going out on the weekends and you're not dragging me into that circle anymore that you want me in because it made you feel better that I was in it. And now that I'm finally getting out of that circle, you're now threatened because, and again, without going too primal here, we are creatures of community. And when someone leaves the community, you always feel like that person saying they're too good for you. And then you start getting threatened. And there's a whole downward spiral here. But with any scenario, as soon as you make a change, you're going to piss someone off. It's unfortunate if it's a close loved one, but I'm not going to lie. I do not believe that someone should be in your circle. I think everyone should earn a right to be in your circle. So whether it's your mum, your sister, your brother, your best friend for life, if they don't fit what you're trying to become and you genuinely believe what your journey is right, I actually would wash them from your life. And it's very hard to hear that. In some situations it's hard, but you should always do you. And everyone should be selfish. If everyone was selfish, sorry to go on here, but if everyone was a bit selfish every now and then, I think the world would be a very different place. Like you try and tell your client to say, there's someone that's very close to me that I did this with the other day. I won't say who they are because I won't call them out. But I said to him, just say you're beautiful. And it sounds so cringy. And they genuinely couldn't say it. And it really upset me they couldn't say it. And I was like, why can't you say it? And they were like, because it's cocky. And I was like, it's not cocky. That's what their X, Y, and Z in their circle have told you that. It is not cocky. Everyone is beautiful in their own way. Like, I would happily say that, I won't blow my trumpet here, but I will happily say the X, Y, Z I am good for because I've worked my arse off to become good at these things. And it's the same as anything when it comes to business, to life, to coaching, to absolutely anything. But you should have the confidence like you have now to go on, I deserve where I am right now. And I've worked my ass off to get there. If someone calls me arrogant for saying that, the 9 times out of 10, they're an insecure prick. So hopefully when Matt was going on, that's probably making me build up to a big explosion of talking then, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, but it also, what I found, I don't know about you, Matt, but I find that a lot of people, when they say certain things, it's through a lack of education. So now, in my own mind, when people say certain things, I'm like, well, they don't actually know about it. So I'm like, okay, cool, you do what you're doing, I'll do what I'm doing. I'm happy with what I'm doing, but thank you for your input. And then I walk off and they're like, oh, because I'm not prepared to be detrimental to my own mental health because someone else is not educated or is not willing to understand what I'm doing and why I want to do it. Over the years, there's been so many times that I can, think of off the top of my head where people have, when you're in a prep and you're really getting lean and people go, are you eating? And I'm like, yeah, 5 times a day. Are you sure? Yes. But are you just eating lettuce? No. And, all of these fit, and you think, why do you need to impart this on me when I'm trying to do something good for myself and achieve, something with my physique? Why do you feel the need to comment on what I'm doing? A, you don't understand. B, you're never going to be able to do it yourself. and see what's it got to do with you anyway. But, you know, depending on the scenario and if you're at work or whatever else, you just need to appease people and be able to take it for what it is. But that in itself is very hard. You know, when I first started prepping and I was becoming a competitor, I used to think, why are these people being so horrible to me? Now I'm like, whatever, you know, you say whatever you want to say.
I suppose a real good example of a challenge that someone entering the bodybuilding world will get is, and I don't know why it happens, but every man and his dog seems to want to have an opinion. Whether it's the person that eats fish and chips 3 times a week and doesn't do any exercise, or you know, and I don't want to label anybody. It's anybody from any. It's, you know, no matter what.
It's the lazy slob watching boxing saying, "Well, he should have put his arm up." Is that? Is there that metaphor people have? You have that like really annoying guy on the couch.
It's not even that. It's not even just that. It's anybody. It's like the person that's just started at the gym wants to give you feedback, or or you know, the gym owner that is a business manager, or you know, somebody, your friend that knows jack shit about dieting, nutrition, fitness, working out, training, mental. You know, everybody has a bit of advice to give you, and I think what is the most confusing thing for me was understanding who knew stuff and who didn't, and then people that you did think knew stuff you listened to and they didn't know jack shit, and then basically if it's like anyone has the ability to tell you stuff. If someone asked me about teeth and, you know, a dentistry and what they do, or I wouldn't have a comment. I'd just say brush your teeth or go and see a dentist. Why does someone have to, you know, who doesn't know jack shit about getting on stage, feel that they've got an opinion to say, oh yeah, you need to eat more, or you need to take carbs out, or you need to do more cardio, or whatever, you know, it's, or you take this or take that, you know, this will help you. And it's so conflicting.
And it's also, I said to you when I stayed at yours the other week, when people, I mean, I'm about to eat something, it's pretty much in my mouth, and they go, are you allowed to eat that?
As soon as someone knows you're a PT, right? It's like,
it's in my mouth. I hope I'm allowed to eat it. And it's like, you know, I even find, I don't know about you, Matt, with other bodybuilders, what are you eating? And I'm like, you know how annoying it is when people ask you that. Why are you asking me that? And you're like, for God's sake, can I not just eat a meal, enjoy it, and move on with my day?
Yeah. It is, like you said, it's either insecurities or poor education around that. And but I was at a family event the other day, and obviously all the elimination diets I've done for years, and I did not actually know this, but my sister-in-law's dad, who I've met like 5 times in my life, that's the first time he's ever seen me not eat out of Tupperware. And I was like, and he was mind blown. And he did the whole, should you be eating pizza? And I was like, probably not from a digestive perspective, I'm not gonna lie to you, but why? and I didn't actually know. And he was like, you normally have a cool bag with food. And I was like, oh shit. And I was like, I did not actually know that, but no, I do. Again, it's a quote unquote balance, right? Depending on what you're doing. But people don't realize, again, it's very easy to Google something and not be the expert of that subject. But and unfortunately, in the fitness world, there is so much crap out there that people genuinely believe. But yeah, I can only imagine that's stressful.
It makes you almost feel, I don't know about you, when he said, like, are you allowed to eat pizza, or are you eating pizza? You then have a thought of, should I be eating pizza? Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't normally. And then it's like, for fuck's sake, I just want to be able to take my foot off the gas for 5 seconds. Yeah. And within the bodybuilding realm, it's been very hard until recently. There's more intuitive eating and various other stuff that's knocking around. You know, I always try and say, you know, it's not a cheap meal. If I'm going for a meal, it's just a meal of food I wouldn't normally eat. But it even goes down, especially I find with bikini competitors, there's this real, you know, when you compete, because you're so focused on what you want to have post show and all of these foods that you can get, all these bakes and Biscoff and all these things, you end up like, you're backstage thinking, I can't wait to eat X, Y, and Z, and you haven't even been on stage yet to exhibit what you've worked for 6 months. And you're thinking, oh, but so-and-so's got me a pizza and so-and-so's made me these brownies. And it's like, please, whatever you do, enjoy your time on stage. This food is there whenever you want to have it. And it's something Steph and I do a podcast with Steph Noble. We talk about this all the time, you know, enjoy the journey and stop worrying about everyone else and what everyone else is telling you to eat, what everyone else is telling you to do. Focus on your performance and what you've prepped for. And then, you know, enjoy that time with other people, but keep all of these things that people say, try and take it with a pinch of salt and understand why you're doing it. And if you've got a coach as well, I'm sure you guys would agree, if they're telling you to do something, then you know that your best interest is at the front of their mind. And that's really all you need to worry about. It doesn't matter what everyone else is saying, because they don't actually know what the protocol is and what you need to do.
The joke is what you just said there, if that wasn't in a bodybuilding world and that was just to say gem pop, you just literally described binge eating.
Yeah.
And it's like, why is it different and why is it okay? This is like anything, like it's a different thing, but when someone says they bloat and that's normal, it's not fuck normal. Like, why is it okay to have that binge eating mindset? Because freaking everyone else is talking about it. Or what's the first cheat meal? Everyone knows that the word cheat meal gets right up my skin. But
it was me.
Oh man, we done a whole episode on it like quite a while ago. But yeah, so when you have that mindset, that literally is an eating disorder.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not being funny. Again, I've never competed. I'd love to, but I ain't going down that route. But I would see it as, and this is how, like me and my wife have spoke about this when I'm like, oh, that XYZ athlete, that is amazing. And she was like, I'm so good for your wife to be okay with you saying that. And I'm like, why? I was like, that's the same as looking at a painting. I think that painting is beautiful. Like I appreciate the work that's gone behind that female that looks like that. Do I find it sexy? No, but do I find it beautiful? Yes. There's a difference there. And you see, it's that you want to showcase that 9 years hard work you've done or whatever. You want to showcase that end result that's you beating yourself yet again like a logbook. And this crosses over as well to training. Like I know Matt trains similar to I do in some ways, in terms of like daisy chains, bands, stuff like that. The amount of clients I have that are petrified to attach a reverse band or a daisy chain or a cuff to their elbow. And because of what some meathead in the gym might say.
Yeah.
I'm like, mate, I was at a gym, I won't say the gym's name, but I was doing that way before Hollinshead and people like that started doing it. And everyone thought it was OTT until hypertrophy coach and JP finally admitted it was good. And all of a sudden everyone was doing like cuff lateral raises and stuff like that. I was doing it way before then because I learned from the guys that pretty much showed them. And it's amazing how for about 5 months I got constant shit. But you have to let that go. It's just, this is the industry. It's a judgmental industry. And competing is a judgmental sport. It's the whole point of the end part of it. And people are so self-obsessed with what someone might say to them that they get obsessed with that rather than what they're doing. And they forget their purpose and what they're trying to do. And again, it all crosses over, right?
That's the point really there. When obviously you've created a scenario where every single one person getting on stage has gone through some kind of food deficit, calorie deficit. So there's an element of hunger there. Anyone that says they're not hungry getting on stage, to be honest, some of the heavyweight bodybuilders can lose weight without actually bringing the food down, and someone, not necessarily everybody, has to go into, I want to point that out, has to go into a huge deficit, but generally you are hungry when you get on stage. And I think it's those people that have got all the cakes and everything lined up. It's because of their journey with their family or friends, and they've said, I could eat this, I can't wait to eat that. So their friends want to help them out, and they want to, so they end up buying all these things or booking them a table to do this. And so you fall into a trap, like a rapid, you're going downstream fast. You're getting ready for a show, and your family and friends are doing what they think is right. As well as all the money-making industries that are literally creating all these juicy, mouth-watering things to try and lure you in. So you're feeling vulnerable anyway. So, but the main point of this is you've got to you've got to know your why very, very strongly. You've got to understand it. If you're doing it for the wrong reasons, then you will fall for it every single time. Yeah. And it's understandable. I've done it many times, but now, me personally, I normally say, if someone says, what could you eat now? What would be the main thing you'd eat? I'd say I'd love to go to my mum's and eat my mum's home cooked food. Just something nice, tasty, wholesome.
But it's also the social aspects, right? It's not the damaging mindset side of it. It's more the social, sitting with your mum, not worrying. It's more that, right?
Well, it's two things. It's obviously a social thing, but my mum's a great cook, and she cooks lovely food. It's around purely around the food. I don't want a pizza, or a shitty little pizza. I've been struggling. I've been literally suffering, want of a better word, but I've been putting myself into this wantonly. I've not moaned about it. Why would I then, after all that, give myself a donut or something I really don't like anyway, or a shit food like a pizza? I want some really good. I've worked hard for that. I want the best food. I want to go to a nice restaurant and have some quality food, not really shit cheap fast food. And that's my mindset, and I think that's because I know my why. And of all my athletes, the ones that do the best, when I say to them, "Right, you're finished. Well done. Now I want you to go away, and I want you to have some time off. So not think about things." And what generally happens is the person that's got the right purpose, the right why, the right reason why they're doing it, they will enjoy themselves, but not be greedy, not over enjoy themselves past the point where they put on 30 pounds in a week. They'll go off and they'll eat whatever it is they fancy. It might be, I don't know, a curry or a cake or something, what did they fancy? But then, after a week, they haven't had 6 donuts or 10 donuts or a whole cheesecake or 5 burgers and a pizza. They've not been greedy. They've gone and had a little bit of what they fancy.
Yeah.
Got back into training and literally back on it. And it's not a chore to them. They haven't had to rebound, because it's like me. I wouldn't rebound now, not unintentionally. I would everything would be kind of prepped, but I would want to say, like I said, can I go out for food with my mum's or go to a nice restaurant? I'd want that balance. So the key is having the strength to know why you're doing this, and so many people don't. They're doing it all for the wrong reasons, and the longer they do it for the wrong reasons, and where they get to, the trajectory that they get to, is potentially the more damaging it can be. And I think this is a great point, because we are technically running out of time. We're getting, I think maybe we've even gone over the hour now, but this is a great point to talk about post-show struggles. That point where it's almost as if most people's journey ends. They prepped for a timeline, they got ready for a show, and then boom, they drop off the face of the earth, or feels like it. So Sarah, if you want to pick this up from a post-show struggles perspective.
Yeah, so definitely the shows where I didn't place were gnarly, like dark places. I even had thoughts of, do I even want to be alive? Like, it got that drastic in my mindset, because like Tyler said, you're like a little Ethiopian. Like, when I had no muscle mass as well, I was literally like, so skinny and like malnourished at that point, because I was in a severe deficit for quite some time and a lot of training. And then the first post show, Christ almighty, like it was, the whole table was filled with everything I thought I desired. So everything I'd seen on Instagram, everything people had told me, you must be missing this, you must want this. I then almost like manifested it in my own mind that I wanted these things. And, everyone that was with me and we were around the table, they were like, well, just get a bit of everything you fancy. If you leave some, we can share it or whatever. Honestly, there was like 4 of us. There was like 8 starters. There was like, 6 mains, puddings galore, hot chocolate, everything. And the car journey home for like 4 hours, I was thinking, I feel like I'm going to die, because the reverse of the Ethiopian is when you then eat, you get that big stomach. I'm literally laying there like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And then you've got that in your mind that you haven't performed well enough to get recognition. So you've then binged, you haven't placed, and you don't have anything on the agenda after, apart from an off season where you're going to gain weight. So you're literally like, fuck, what happens now? I need to be able, I've got to somehow get through this period. So then you overtrain, and then literally you're just in this like parallel universe. You've come back to I'm in Bognor Regis, in this little town. There's hardly any bodybuilders. I work at a leisure centre and there's no bodybuilders here really. You know, no one really gets what you're going through. And then, you know, you've got your parents, they want to look after you and various other things, and you just don't know what to do. And then I'd say definitely as the seasons have gone on and, you know, I'm more successful in the sport now, after a show, I'm like, I just want to go for an a la carte meal, have a 3-course meal, look at the menu and go, I fancy X, Y, and Z, have that, maybe have some sides as well, and really, really enjoy the palate experience. But above all else, be with the people that are in my circle that have helped me get to that point. It's not now about filling myself up so I feel like I need to be sick or, well, I just, you know, you just can't cope. And that's my advice that I give to people. I've had so many bikini competitors say, what do you eat after the show? And I'm like, don't smash the shit that you can track on MyFitnessPal. Get, you know, have nice homemade stuff, have a restaurant experience of things that you haven't had for 20 weeks or more, you know, enjoy that time. There's no point in going and eating, well, in my mind, I know it might be different for other people, but, you know, things like Reese's, it's in Tesco all year round. You can go and buy that whenever you want. Whereas if you go to, you know, if you go to a restaurant that's got an a la carte menu and it's like, you know, a really nice homemade crumble with an ice cream flavor you've never tried or whatever, you know, different palate experience. It's like the senses are alive, you're really enjoying it, your family are there and they can enjoy it with you. You're not backstage in your bikini, half your makeup's come off and you're eating pick a mix.
Yeah.
You know, what are we trying to do here? You know, what is the important thing? And like you said, Matt, that's, if you know what your why is, as you progress as a competitor, that becomes easier to accept that, you know, you can go and have a nice meal with your family and also have something like, you know, a bit of cheesecake or whatever. And it is what it is. You can enjoy that and then have a meal as well. And it's cool, you know.
Not feel guilty about it.
Yeah, because I think as well, you know, if I hadn't have had those bad experiences with eating and turning into like the gigantic belly and not being able to sleep and all these things, I'd probably still want to do it because I hadn't done it. So there's the caveat to actually sometimes doing that it sets you up for success when you then compete again. But definitely, I had those binge periods, probably, you know, first 3 shows. The second show, we ended up getting like a massive Domino's each, and we all had a large Domino's each in the car on the way home, and then ate like a massive cheesecake each. And again, I felt horrendous. Yeah. Like you said, Matt, you can put on, you know, pounds and pounds and pounds of water retention, body weight and whatever, and you're literally like, I don't even know what to do with myself.
It'd be quite an interesting thing. Like, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but obviously I would, but to actually have maybe a part 2 where you yourself could cover the mindset and going through it, and you can also cover the organ function to it. So for example, body temperature, thyroid health. With a low thyroid, which is going to be at the end of a prep, your drive's actually through the floor. And then when you go and binge off of that, you're not going to have the metabolic drive to digest that food. You're probably going to have a suboptimal liver, which isn't going to digest the fats very well, hence why you bloat so heavy. And all these organs have direct functions to anxiety, serotonin release, happy hormones.
So Jamie, like, why don't we do like a science-based walkthrough from prep? So in the sense of what, even starting from, you know, some people who take all the carbs out and go under 1,000 calories, you know, well, we could start off that way and see how the body's damaged by that. You know, all those kind of things. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that as well, because actually, just quickly, I know we need to wrap up, but I'm going to need to go into a longer recovery period myself, because I've been having some tests and stuff, and I've got potential stuff going on my liver. I've got an overworking kidney. I haven't actually had a menstrual cycle for over 5 years. And that's from excessive dieting, exercise, and various other things. So I would really like that opportunity, if you wanted me to come back on, to actually talk about how it's not just training and nutrition. There's a lot more to it, which people don't understand.
So why don't we use you as the example then, and Tyler maybe to a certain degree as well. Yeah. Do a walkthrough of what can happen. We've already
we can take it as far as you want. If you both want to get blood work done, I can go through that.
I've got blood work from just a couple of months ago, which is pretty gnarly. So yeah.
And that's normal ranges as well. That's not optimal ranges.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
Just before we leave
I'm excited.
There's something I wanted to talk about, and what it was is still talking about almost like immature, not understanding your why. I'm still on that topic because I think it's important.
Yeah.
One of the most common things that you see is the person that definitely doesn't understand their why is when they're complaining about the prep. You know, it's that, oh my God, I'm so hungry. Oh my God, I'm so tired. Oh my God, I can't do this. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It's that person is generally on the journey from hell because they have not got a defined why, and they not enjoying the process whatsoever. And that is quite common. There's, I would say, a high percentage of people you see are constantly moaning about the prep, about the journey, and that is because they are not in tune with why they are doing this. There's a conflict of interest between actually what they want to do, what makes them happy, and what they are doing. The two different paths.
I'm so happy we did this podcast because you know what's crazy? Are you guys looking at this from a prep scenario? There's someone that helps people identify food issues, that they're compromising health, blood work issues, or someone that looks in the inside, right? It's exactly the same. So, for example, I have clients that previous, I'm not going to call you names, don't worry if you're shitting yourself right now, that are like, I can't run this elimination diet. Like, I need this. And I was like, right. And then we talk, and then we find out an ex-partner's abused them, or someone said they're not good enough. I was like, so realistically, you're trying to lose weight. You don't give a shit about your health. That's why this elimination diet isn't working for you. It's nothing to do with you have to have a bagel every day. And I was like, no, you've got it in your head that you need to have that bagel. Like, it's not the elimination diet's fault, basically. And elimination diet probably is not to the physical intent, but the mental strain of elimination diet is not fun. Hence why it's one of those things where I nurture people through it, because it's not fun to go, you can't eat this anymore if you want to get X, Y, Z out of it. And the first thing you hear, like someone that has a week of elimination diet, they go, can I have a cheat meal now? I'm like, you've been having cheat meals for the last 10 years. That's why you're where you are now. And I was like, and they're not cheat meals, and that's when I go my own brand. But it's that mindset of, if they understood the health issues that were in front of them that I've diagnosed and shown them, they actually appreciated it. And it wasn't for a hidden agenda that they haven't told you. They wouldn't even need to ask, because they're like, oh, I feel great eating this. I realized that gluten was causing inflammatory load to my gut and all these things that I've gone through with them. But if they're like, right, I haven't had bagels for a week now, am I fixed yet? I'm like, wow. And I was like, that straight away is a red flag that the mindset needs to be addressed. And it's the same with that prep scenario. So it's amazing how everything you're saying, I'm like, wow, that sounds exactly the same as what I do, but from a health perspective, not, because it is another extreme. Like, to optimize your health in today's world, it's not easy. Like, we breathe toxic air all day without being too hippie. And it's very hard to chase optimal. Well, you never really will hit it, but to just improve yourself when you've spent years building negative habits. To break those habits, there is a change that is going to be mentally draining at some point. You're going to lose friends, you're going to lose things. And it's just quite, I'm really happy we did this, because it shows the difference between everyday Joe can have the same struggles, but to an athlete. They're
not dissimilar. It's similar. And this is what sometimes where people mistake, they put bodybuilders in a different light, but actually the journey is very similar. The fact that one is getting on stage and one isn't, or one might be developing more muscle for a competition, but actually the journey is very, very similar. The outcomes are very, very similar.
You know, when people sort of, you know, you said about being hungry, and, you know, people go, oh, I'm in the trenches and all this. You know, if people say to me now, are you hungry? My blanket response is, I'm hungry for success. Simple, you know, and that's because I know my why. That's because I know what I want to achieve. That's not because I'm being an ignorant wanker. You know, I just, what's more important to me at this point? And it's a choice. Bodybuilding is a choice. And this is what people need to understand. And I say, you know, I feel so passionate about that, because it's like, there's people out there that are actually hungry because they cannot source food. So why on earth are you messaging me on Instagram saying, how do you combat hunger? You know, it's like, because I want to. This is because I know my why.
Sarah, you asked me the question the other day, am I hungry? So my answer was, I'm always bloody hungry, whether I'm on prep or not prep, because I'm a greedy bastard. I like food.
But we can have a laugh, can't we?
As well, Matt. I'm a really hungry person as well.
I'm always hungry, so, but it's no different. Yeah, okay, might be a little bit more hungry, but it's not for me to moan about. I just accept it and get on with it. It's
you probably find those people that are asking you that have tried to do it themselves, Googled everything, haven't got a coach, and done things too aggressively. They're doing 2 hours cardio a day on 700 calories a day.
Get a coach that knows their shit and gives a shit. Understand your why. The rest is history.
So
days as well. There is difficult days in there, and that's when you really have to remember them reasons what you said there, Sarah, and use them to drive you through them more difficult days.
Yeah.
That's how you become successful, Tyler, is finding your anchors that stop you from sinking. It's those things that keep you on the right path. So that's a very, very important point there. Probably the most important point out of all is if you find a why, you will always have an anchor point. You'll never go out too far. Yeah. But before we wrap up, I want to tell you about what I done one year after show, because we're all guilty of it. I'm not a saint.
I do these things.
Yeah. So I remember I literally bought every single cake, everything possible. Someone bought me a tray of donuts, 20 donuts.
20?
There was
fucking rookie numbers, mate.
Two or three packets of like the finest cookies. And I had, what I was doing was I had a tub of Nutella and a tub of peanut butter and a cookie and a cup of coffee. And I was literally every single biscuit and I ate the whole tub of Nutella, the whole tub of peanut butter, 3 packets of biscuits. I ate about 6 or 7 donuts. This is all in one day. I ate about 5 cakes. I felt sick. But then about 2 hours later, I was like, okay, round 2. So I ate the rest of the donuts, the rest of the cakes. The next day I woke up and I had a full cooked English breakfast. I was on it. I put 30, so feeling the best I'd ever felt, looking the best I'd ever felt. 6 days later, I'd already put on 32 pounds in scale weight.
Fuck!
When you were calling that out, I was literally thinking of every organ that would suffer and nervous system that would suffer from that one coffee sscenario. With the
Jamie's like,
I know, I've done the same thing, not to that extent, but I've done the same thing, and when you know about it, it's like, ow.
Well, talking about the insecurities, the reasons why, and all this, I remember posting and bragging. I put on 32 pounds in 6 days. What I was covering up was the fact that my heart was struggling. I was struggling to breathe. I felt in a bad place, like physically. I was training, but I didn't feel. I looked in the mirror and I thought, what have you done? I've literally destroyed it in 6 days. My best hero to 0 in 6 days. But I always like to do things excessively. I like to take things to the max, and I'd done that to the max, and that was a lesson for me then. And that was probably, like Sarah said herself, you have to do it once sometimes to learn. And I did learn a big lesson there.
I think it would be silly as a competitor to think that you're not going to have, at least a few periods of binge eating. Like I can hand on heart say, and I can remember them all where it, like you said, Jamie, you picked up that when describing certain scenarios, it would be a binge eating episode. And
it's labeled normal because as a competitor, right? As
a bodybuilder, yeah. Like, oh, well, it's a cheat meal. I've done a show, so I deserve to eat all of this.
Yeah.
It's not quite like that when you get down the road of being a competitor. But, and Tyler, you mentioned earlier, it's like a mild form of a food disorder. It's disordered eating in essence, because you eat at the same time, the same stuff. You're eating out your Tupperware, you're separating yourself from society. It is disordered eating. But I think as bodybuilders, we can say, but it's for a purpose, so it's okay.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that's just, I say, what's mad is if you think of a bodybuilder's journey inside and out the whole lifestyle, you train, which if we pull everything back is intelligently self-harming, because you're destroying tissue, which is why you get an endorphin release. And then that then repairs through self-harming. You then either force feed or under eat because you've got an end goal. You've then got to isolate yourself to some extent from people that aren't going to support you, because it'll make your journey 10 times harder if they don't support you. Now, you put someone that has incredible insecurities, they've had body dysmorphia or have body dysmorphia, they've had abusive relationships, they've been neglected in their life by their dad, their parents, whatever. You've just created an environment that's 10 times worth that individual for a trophy that they may not even get, and they can actually be feeling worse. So realistically, I'm not trying to slag off bodybuilding because I love the hell out of it. So it's what I like, but you have to be realistic to realize if you're going to chase this journey, there is so much more to social media and likes. And you're probably setting yourself up for a very, very strong bill of therapy if it doesn't go right. And it's so, because everyone does that. How many people are insecure? Virtually everyone is. And it's probably impossible to want to be a bodybuilder without an insecurity, otherwise you wouldn't care about the perfectionism of it, especially if you do it right. So realistically, you have to realize that by doing that journey alone, you're either trying to beat an issue, which is obviously amazing, or you're hiding from one. Hopefully you're trying to beat one, because getting lean and winning a show is not going to make your ex-boyfriend love you more, like, which I've heard so many times, and I'm not even a competitor. So yeah, it's
anyone that looks to compete, never do it for anybody else but yourself, for sure.
Yeah.
Jamie, it's good to get your kind of.
I started to breathe halfway through the episode again with my nose cleared up, so I was like, "Hey, I can talk now."
It was good to have your final kind of wrap up there of kind of what you got out of that. I think that summarised it very, very well. But to wrap up, and before we say goodbye to Sarah, I just want to thank you, Sarah. Thank you for joining us. That was spectacular. I think for anyone that does listen, and the headline I think for this one is, before you do, or if you are during a journey or contest, you need to listen to this podcast, because
if you're trying to reach a goal, because this will correlate to any goal in life, even a business goal, this could technically relate to. It's
so valuable for anyone starting out on a journey to listen to what Sarah's had to say, what Tyler's had to say. Just ignore anything that Jamie ever says.
I do. My wife does. Everyone else does. My clients do.
Honestly, like, it's so nice to be able to share this stuff in just an honest and transparent way. Like, why can't we all come together and help each other? Yes, it is an individual sport, but why not help each other through the experiences we've had? And, like I said at the start, even if one person listens to this, for me, that's enough, and they take a nugget of information, because it's a scary journey at times,
Do you know what's just mad? As someone that's wanted to compete, like, if we had this conversation 2 years ago when my life was trying to compete, that would have been inspiring. I want to have that dying of hunger. I want to have all these things, right? And I know full well now the insecurities that would have led that thought process. Now, don't get me wrong, I'd love to compete. The only reason I want to compete now is for a fuck you to that you can do it, no matter how much health issues your body develops. But they're like, looking at it now, it's almost that, like, I've had kids, I'm married, stuff like that, and you start to look at it as, it really is something that is amazing, but it's something that you have to realize is not healthy in some ways. Yes, it'd be great for the gram and your social life to that extent, but to be honest, if I was to do it, it'd prove to my kids that you can truly do anything you want to do because of all the issues I've had, but to actually help my business. That's the only two reasons I'd compete now. It used to be because I wanted to be a pro bodybuilder. That's like, I don't want to live like that all the time. Like I said to the fan member that never saw me not eat out of plastic, like, so I mean, like, things like that. And I think it's cool to have every aspect of almost someone's opinion on it, as we just had in this chat.
Jamie, what I would like to talk about in a subsequent podcast, and it happens every single year. I see the same thing happening, and we've touched on some of the elements already, but it's about trying to. So first of all, we talked about it today about identifying the why. How do you do that? I'd like to talk about that, and also the damaging effects of pursuing this sport when you don't know your reasons why. So again, we're going to cover some of that as we talk through the process, and from a kidney, liver, perspective, but emotionally as well. I think what I see too many times is people starting this journey, they get told some advice to do this, they then go off 200%. When you've got to if your why is to be, so let's just take the example of, you wanted to be an Olympian bodybuilder. Well, not everyone can do that. And before you start on that journey, you've got to really assess how good are you going to be. Because I could never be, even if I started from day one with all the best advice in the world, I would never be Mr. Olympia. My genetics do not allow me to do that. Plus other factors in, life, friends, family, commitments, all these other things that do get in the way. So
most Olympians that win don't have a family, or they've had them very later on in life. So if you're a young parent, I'm sorry, but you're not having 10 hours sleep to develop the most tissue you can develop. Like, you've got kids now, The
things I want to expose, I'm trying to talk about exposing some nasty things in the sport. Is trying to draw out some nasty things so that people are aware before they start the journey, before you buy the bus ticket from hell or the one to heaven. It depends on, you've got to make the right choices of why are you doing it. You've also got to get the right advice, because if you're giving the wrong advice, then it's quite common for people to end up in hospital because they're taking things that they shouldn't be taking, or they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And that journey turned in from a soul searching journey into a losing an organ journey, or dying, or whatever, getting divorced, when actually it wasn't a bad relationship, it was problems. There's all kinds of things that we should expose, and don't just dive into this just because you want to look good.
I'd love to get stuck into that, honestly.
We could have like 5 episodes based around
this.
I think it's so important that we expose all the spiders in the cupboard, or wherever the phrase is, all the nasty things. Let's bring them out, let's expose them, and let people be aware of them.
I think we could be onto a good thing here, gang.
But this way, I've seen athletes have worse blood work than Gen Pop that have competed.
Exactly. Just because it looked good doesn't mean the...
To be honest, you're probably the unhealthiest you've ever been in your life on stage, if you want to look at it like that.
Right now, I'm in a good place.
One of the things I wanted to put, when we draw out the ugly truth, is about risk management. And to be the best in the world, there's a certain amount of risk that you have to manage. Now, as an amateur bodybuilder wanting to just look good, should you be taking all the things that your mate down the gym who's making money off it, be taking as an amateur for your first show? Should you be taking like the same amount, or twice the amount, or even 4 times the amount of Mr. Olympia because you're misguided, your genetics are shit? Actually, why are you in that situation? It's fucked up. And I'm passionate about that, because I see people getting very, very ill and dying because the wrong things are happening. And I think that's what we need to really pull out, is some of the bad things that happen in the sport.
Yeah, because I think you can be at quite a vulnerable point as well, when you're aiming for this goal and you're so driven to achieve it. When you get told to do something, be like, right, well, actually, this is probably what I need. This is what I'm being told to do. So I'll do this to get the result that I want, when actually, that's not always the case.
I think that's such a good subject, though, because I would love to hear you, like you guys talk about that, and then me as a pretty much becoming a health-based physique coach, which is really fucked up because they don't really work well together, to sit there and say, well, by doing that, it could equal this. Like when you hear coaches, and I'm not going to name any names, obviously, but you hear people go, oh, my coach is just giving me this. And I'm like, why the fuck is your coach giving you that? Obviously, I'm not going to say anything. It's like, but just almost having that realistic.
What I would like to get to a point in time where, so risk management is managed by the key people in that scenario. So as a health coach, an athlete, a federation, all working together. So risk management around potential. So what is your potential? Why would a guy that's literally just wants to get on stage, feel better, look better, be pushing himself in the gym and chemically and all these kind of things when he doesn't need to? So the risk, you just say to that guy, why don't you just be natural and train the best you can to feel healthy? If there's some guy that really has potential, his absolute why is to be Mr. Olympia without any, distraction. He wants to be Mr. Olympia. He has to understand what those risks mean. What does that risk entail? And then if they accept that risk, that's his choice. Normally they should be an adult. But also these things happen to juniors as well, and that's another thing. They're not adults and they shouldn't be making those kind of decisions, but that's another topic. But this is what I'm saying, is risk management. You need someone like yourself, Jamie, to be in there from a health perspective, to be able to judge the risk. So someone will say, my coach who's the competitive coach who wants me to look my best and said to do this. And then you say, well, if you do that, that's your choice, but this could cause toxic build-up in the liver, blah, 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 the health. And then it's for them to manage that risk and say, well, actually, what are the alternatives? How could I manage this healthier? How could I get this level of, how could I look this good with less risk? And, you know, the simple answer is, a lot of the time is, most people are so toxic for overuse of chemicals, overtraining, not eating the right food, not sleeping enough. If you sleep better, eat better, train better, which are all the things we've said, you often don't need any chemical supplements. You certainly don't need excessive amount of chemicals.
Yeah.
You then get that, so you pull things back, you do things properly, you'll get a way better physique, much healthier, and that's what I'm trying to talk about: risk management,
put it this
balance,
way, right?
health.
To do a God's eye, sorry.
I was just saying, more isn't always better, and I think we can always walk into that aspect of, if I take more of this, I'm going to get a better result, but it's not always the case, is it?
No, well, look at this. The most common, very quick example I can give you, this is one of many, right? So as someone that reads bloods, it's very unlikely that I don't see a liver issue, and the normal ranges are ridiculously wide. The optimal ranges are very short. So it's very, very common for some liver dysfunction to be occurring, magnesium deficiency, B6 deficiency occurring, hemoglobin to be issues where you're not breathing properly. Most people don't breathe through their nose. Fucking hypocrite with a blocked nose right now. But all these things occur, right? Most people have high, yes, rub it in. I'm sympathetic constantly at the moment. But like monocytes being high, which leads to things like leaky gut, which is a white blood cell, right? So those things alone are incredibly common. Now, you go on a restrictive diet, that stress is going to rip your gut lining apart even more so. Now, that sounds so hippie out there, but it's very true. Any excessive stress will do that. Any dieting will do that because it's destroying tissue, it's catabolic. And then you combine that with a refeed day full of foods that probably don't digest well. Let's just go down the bagel route because they're my go-tos, or a nice bowl of oats. Now, you eat those foods, yeah, and now they aggravate your gut lining further. That your happy hormones produced there, I can't even quote the percentage, but a stupid amount of your percentage of your immune system's there. So you've just downregulated happy hormones and your immune system as a whole. Now, if you then have liver buildup, like liver issues building up, bilirubin being high, your liver enzymes being elevated, and you did go down the chemically enhanced route, which, just be honest, a lot of us do, and a lot of people don't like to admit it. And anyone that's oblivious to this, a lot more people are than you think. Not saying everyone, just a lot more are. Now, straight away, you start injecting oils, you start taking orals, your liver's already compromised from the food you're bloody eating. Now, imagine that on top. Your coach isn't going to check, well, most coaches are not going to check that.
So, Jamie, just to cut you short because we're coming to the end, but this is exactly what I was talking about. I was going
to go on a tangent. Thank you, Matt. I was going to go. I was off. I saw the time.
I know you were. But this is what I'm talking about. You pull things back is often the better thing. To put your foot on the gas is sometimes the wrong thing. And I think that if we can expose those ugly things,
the prep before the prep, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe we can feed in. I don't know about you, Tyler, but I've restricted myself with certain food groups and various things because I felt like I shouldn't have X, Y, and Z. I've then got food sensitivities now, and I can't eat. Well, I can eat certain things, but the bloat is real. And then, there's a lot of implications as to leading a restrictive lifestyle from that. So I think that would be really useful for the listeners as well.
It's that inner Ethiopian wanting to get out again.
Yeah, let me out.
Right, I'm gonna literally, because we've been on this for an hour and a half, we tried to limit it to 60 minutes. It warranted the 90 minutes. It was such a good episode. So honestly, Sarah, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your journey and your feelings and advice as well. Thank you. I think it's important that, Jamie, when you do the bio of this, that we make sure that people watch this to the end. You've got to watch the end bit. Is probably you're going to cram in anything, cram in the end bit. Yeah, that's the best bit. We're talking about next.
How do people find you on Instagram?
Oh yeah,
so on Instagram, I'm under Sarah Parker Hatchard, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, but I also do a YouTube sort of podcast with Steph, who is a good friend of mine and my posing coach. So you can find me on YouTube as well under Sarah Parker Hatchard. any messages or anything on Instagram or any help I can give, I'm more than happy for people to reach out. So feel free, and obviously share this pod on your stories and stuff, because it helps us reach out to people.
Yeah,
definitely. This is valuable for people. This is going to help people. So it's a good thing. Right. So I'm going to shut up. Jamie's going to shut up. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys.
See you later.